The garden that spoke of memories. Eleanor Hart's garden was unlike any other in Willow Creek. Where others planted neat rows of identical shrubs, Eleanor's yard was a wild tapestry of color, texture, and history. A winding stone path cut through lavender, roses, and rare climbing vines that her late husband, Thomas, had planted nearly 40 years earlier. Each flower had a story. The red roses by the gate were for her daughter's birth. The lilacs had been Thomas's favorite. The ivy along the fence had been carefully nurtured from a cutting passed down by Eleanor's grandmother. To her, it wasn't just a garden, it was her heart laid bare across the soil. But to the Homeowners Association, it was a problem. From their perspective, her garden was unkept. Too much color, too little symmetry. Where they wanted uniformity, Eleanor's yard shouted individuality. And in Willow Creek, individuality was something the HOA did not tolerate. The notice that broke the silence. The day the letter arrived, Eleanor had been humming softly while watering her roses. She opened the mailbox, pulled out a crisp envelope with the HOA's seal, and read the words that nearly knocked the breath from her chest. HOA violation, fine, $5,000 for unsightly garden. Haar hinges shoe. She read it again, hoping she had misunderstood. But no, the words were clear. Unsigel garden. She sank onto the porch steps, the letter crumpling in her hands. $5,000 was more than her monthly pension. More than she could ever spare. Tears welled in her eyes. This wasn't just about money. It was about someone looking at the garden she and Thomas had built with their hands, and calling it ugly. The board's ultimatum. At the next HOA meeting, Eleanor walked in clutching the letter. The room smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. A row of board members sat at a long table, papers stacked neatly before them. Brenda, the HOA president, leaned forward with a smirk. Mrs. Hart, she said, tapping her pen. Your garden violates Section 14. Uniform landscaping. It must be grass, trimmed hedges, or approved flowers. Yours is none of these. Eleanor's voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. This garden is my life's work. My husband built it, every stone, every flower. It's not weeds, it's history. Brenda tilted her head, unimpressed. Either pay the fine or remove it. Those are your only options. The room was silent. No one defended her. Eleanor walked out with her shoulders heavy, but a spark lit in her chest. They thought they could erase her history with one piece of paper. She would prove them wrong. A stranger's interest. One afternoon, while Eleanor trimmed a patch of lavender, a man paused by her gate. He was tall, with glasses and a leather satchel slung over his shoulder. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help noticing your garden. Do you know what you have here?" Eleanor looked up, startled. "An HOA fine," she muttered bitterly. The man smiled. "No. What you have here is extraordinary." His name was Marcus Reed, a city historian. He knelt to examine the old stone path, brushing away moss with careful hands. His eyes widened. "These stones, do you know where they came from?" Eleanor shook her head. "They match quarry stone from the 1800s. Rare. And this rose bush, these are heirloom hybrids you can't buy anymore. Your garden might be one of the last surviving Victorian layouts in the county." For the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt hope. The hidden history. Marcus returned days later, bringing old maps, photographs, and plant experts. Together, they uncovered a secret Eleanor never knew. Her husband had preserved more than beauty, he had preserved history. The birdbath the HOA mocked? Hand-carved marble from the early 1900s. The ivy, brought over by settlers. The stone walls, original to the town's founding families. Eleanor listened, her heart swelling with each discovery. She whispered softly to herself, "Thomas, you knew. They stormy before the cow." Word spread quickly. The local paper ran a headline, "Widow's Garden may be historic treasure." Neighbors began stopping by, curious and supportive. But the HOA was furious. At the next meeting, Brenda's voice rang sharp. "This is nonsense. This is a residential neighborhood, not a museum. If the city takes this over, we lose control." We can't allow it. Eleanor sotod, har voices tiadinal. You try to destroy something priceless. Iu ante de uniformite. But what you call weeds is history. Derrumbuzed wifi murmurs. For the first time, some neighbors looked at Brenda with doubt. The city's decision. De turning point came on a bright morning. City officials arrived with cameras, reporters, and a polished brass plaque. Marcus smiled as he read the decree. This garden is hereby declared a protected historic landmark, valued at over $500,000. Applause erupted. Eleanor's hands trembled as she touched the plaque. Tears ran down her cheeks. She whispered, "We did it, Thomas. We saved it." The HOA's collapse. The HOA's $5,000 fine now looked laughable. Their authority crumbled as neighbors questioned every past decision. "Why did you bully her?" someone shouted at Brenda. Within weeks, the board fractured. Half resigned. A recall vote loomed for the rest. Brenda's smugness was gone. She looked small and cornered. Eleanor hadn't fought with anger. She had simply stood her ground. And truth had dismantled the HOA from within. A garden for everyone. Eleanor's garden became more than hers alone. School groups toured it, learning about heritage plants. Photographers came to capture the ivy arches and rare roses. Couples posed for engagement photos among the blooms. Neighbors who once walked by in silence now stopped to chat, to listen, to share stories. The garden that had once divided the community now became its heart. Eleanor smiled each morning as she opened her gate, not just to water plants, but to welcome people. De legacy lives on. Years later, Eleanor sat on her porch in a rocking chair, the plaque gleaming in the sun. Butterflies drifted lazily over the roses. She thought of her husband, of the battle, of the tears and triumphs. The HOA had once tried to erase her garden. Instead, they had written its story deeper into history. Her garden was no longer a fine. It was no longer ugly. It was priceless. Eternal. A living legacy. And every bloom that opened whispered the same truth. Love leaves roots that no rulebook can ever pull out.